Teh Maimunah Abdul Aziz has a career of more than 20 years in banking and finance, focusing on areas of Islamic finance and investment banking. She currently holds the position of Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Hong Leong Islamic Bank. Prior to the above positions, Teh was Global Head of Islamic Markets at Bursa Malaysia, Chief Corporate Officer and Head of International Business at Kuwait Finance House Malaysia, CEO of Bank Al Hayr Malaysia, and the Head of Investment Banking at RHB Sakura Merchant Bank, now known as RHB Investment Bank. This week, Tribute to GLCs shares her insights on the banking GLCs.
Hello, I'm Rosmani Samdali and welcome to Tribute to GLCs. Now, Malaysian banking GLCs have transformed the financial landscape to be a vibrant component of the economy and contributed to national development. Its evolution was marked by several milestones that created a banking landscape that has transformed from a slew of many small and medium-sized banks to the rise of formidable institutions in the likes of Maybank and CIMB. Now, one person who has deep insights of the banking industry from the perspective of someone involved intimately within the GLC fraternity is Teh Maimunah Abdul Aziz, Managing Director and CEO of Hong Leong Islamic Bank. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, okay, Teh. The banking sector is the barometer of the economy, and among the 17 GLCs, there are 5 banking or financial institutions, namely Maybank, CIMB, MBSB, AFIN, and BIMB. Now let's talk about government participation in the banking GLCs. Do you think that they should be enhanced, or do you think should they be reduced, to promote greater private sector involvement?
Well, we have 5 out of 17 now, so that's not terribly many. And the 2 largest Malaysian banks are GLCs. I think in terms of participation, it's okay where it is, because at the end of the day, when you talk about the difference in private sector involvement and government sector involvement in banks, the banking industry works a little differently than any other industry. It's a very highly regulated industry. So you have Bank Negara overseeing all banks. So regardless of its shareholding, the duties of directors in key offices of a bank is actually codified by law. Beyond the Companies Act, we have our own act called the Financial Services Act. And our duties and responsibilities are to our depositors, first and foremost, before even our shareholders. So in terms of participation, the shareholders generally contribute to maybe formulation of a business direction as a whole. The management of the banks are largely governed by the central bank. So in that sense, I think we have a nice balance between the private sector and the government-owned banks, plus the foreign banks that's in the country, and I think it's a good mix.
I see. So you mentioned about the regulation. So you are saying, in essence, the perception is banking GLCs have, have an advantage over the other banks. So with this regulation, you are saying that it's level playing field for everyone?
In today's age, any bank would really have to be at par with the industry, not just in Malaysia, regionally and globally. So whilst perhaps some views that, if your shareholding is the government, that it opens doors to you. That could be true also, door opening. But beyond the door opening, the whole running of the business would really have got to be best practice. Because, well, let's take you, for instance, right? You are a consumer, and you have banking, you bank with one of us. Yes. And your choice of your bank is, I cannot imagine a consumer saying, I will bank with this bank because the bank is owned by A, B, or C. It is really what that bank offers you as a consumer. So in that sense, that view that GLC banks and that sense of entitlement of GLCs as a whole is not so relevant, at least not in my industry. although some door opening may facilitate, but at the end of the day, you really have to compete.
I agree. Okay. Now, you have some GLC banking GLCs who have gone big, regionally, likes of Maybank and CIMB. Now, how can their success going regionally or becoming regional champions be emulated by other GLCs?
Well, we start with Malaysia being a champion of ASEAN, and in that sense, the proxy of Malaysia's pitch to ASEAN have been those two banks. And they have been rather visible. And I guess if they don't champion it, who else will, right? So that is, in my view, a good start for other businesses and other industries to take shape. Banking has always been viewed as something a little bit more homogeneous, so a little easier to go out and regionalize. So I guess on that score, we still have a long way to go to see how the rest of our industries will actually go regional. But those two banks have actually paved way and hopefully inspire everybody else that it is possible, that you could have a homegrown brand that is known everywhere in ASEAN. Yeah, so that's a good start.
So how about the regional expansion thus far? What are your views on that?
From the banking industry, I would say that the whole landscape of banking has changed somewhat. So for banks to successfully go regional, we cannot expect to just copy-paste what we do here. So it's very important that banks or any industry that want to go regional, GLCs or otherwise, must know that the ability to adapt and to be agile and to innovate and localize its content. So localization of content is very important. It's not just in your industry, but as well as
Become a chameleon of some sort.
Yes, I give you a very good example. For instance, the likes of Indonesia or Vietnam. The banking penetration is low in those countries, but mobile penetration is very high, right? Whereas here, everybody has more than one bank account, but not necessarily more than 2 phones.
Okay.
So you have to approach it from a different angle, and I think that would be the key to our success.
Okay. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we will be talking more about banking GLCs, the digitization as well, and Teh Maimunah's personal journey in the sector. Stay with us. Welcome back to Tribute to GLCs. Now, with over 20 years of experience under her belt in banking and finance, Teh Maimunah has proven that nothing is impossible once you set your heart and mind to it. Let's take a quick look at her achievements.
I'm really the last speaker because I'm the least sexy of the lot here. I've been a banker for more than 20 years. And then we've been going on doing our own business for the last 20 years, and then somehow for the last 3 years we woke up and we found ourselves that a lot of other people are kind of getting into our space, into our business.
Being the head honcho of one of the largest business groups in Malaysia and internationally has certainly its own set of challenges, especially for a woman making a living in a country where the workforce is dominated by men. Recent statistics by Hayes Asia Salary Guide 2015 show senior management roles filled by women in Malaysia have increased from 29% in 2014 to 34% in 2015. However, the state of gender equality in the country is progressing at a slow pace. With an honorary doctorate of law from East London University in the United Kingdom and as the former global head of Islamic markets at Bursa Malaysia, Teh Maimunah has proven that breaking the glass ceiling is possible. From being a major player in Bursa Malaysia, a government-linked company, to later making waves in the corporate banking sector at the helm of Hong Leong Islamic Bank, Teh Maimunah has made the successful transition from a GLC to a non-GLC. With over 20 years of experience under her belt in banking and finance, with particular attention to Islamic and investment banking, she was made Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Hong Leong Islamic Bank in 2011, a post she holds until today. Raja Teh Maimunah is also the advisor on Islamic banking and finance to the World Islamic Economic Forum Foundation, a board member of the Islamic Banking and Finance Institute of Malaysia, or IBFIM, and a member of the Islamic Finance Committee for the Malaysian Institute of Accountants. She also sits on the board of Hong Leong MSIG Takaful.
Now, Rajate, earlier in the show, we spoke an overview about the banking GLCs and the regional expansion route. Now, what are your views on the capital levels of banking GLCs in light of the Basel III requirements? There have been some reports saying that the capital levels in Malaysia are inadequate.
We are, again, very regulated, and the introduction of Basel III is done over a series of times. So we have deadlines to meet for both our capital and liquidity requirements. It's no bank can operate in this country if they don't fulfill those minimum requirements set by the central bank and Basel III. So, those deadlines are different in different countries. So as far as Malaysia is concerned, we can only operate if we meet those minimum requirements. So, you know, everyone, as far as I'm aware, is well within those minimum requirements and more.
So actually we are okay. We're doing okay.
We are okay.
Yeah, wonderful.
In fact, if I may just add a little bit, you know, after the Asian financial crisis, the Malaysian banks have really we have transformed ourselves, a series of consolidation, capitalization. And that is really a testimony to, after the 2008 Western financial crisis, none of our banks got involved or got into trouble. So we're okay.
Wonderful. So do you think, when you said about consolidation among banks, do you think there should be a consolidation among the banking GLCs, you know, to create mega bank?
Well, it depends on your objectives. If you want to build size for ASEAN purposes, perhaps, because the largest Malaysian bank is within the top 10 ASEAN bank, but not the biggest. So unless you feel, unless a view of, you know, combining some to become #1 in ASEAN, if that's the view. Or the other is to build a big Islamic bank, for instance, because Islamic banks in general are small. So those kind of consolidation, maybe, but it still has to be largely driven by commercial objectives more than anything else.
Okay, we just saw just now all the, you know, a video on you know, your achievements. Congratulations for all the awards that you have won. Let's talk about your personal journey. Now, how has the transition been for you, you know, from being a GLC to a non-GLC environment? What were the paradigm shifts or the challenges that you had to face?
You know, when people ask me that question, I find that quite amusing because, again, within the banking industry, we're very managed and we're very regulated. So the shareholding element tends to be a little bit more towards formulation of a business direction. But in terms of running the bank, the management of the bank, we're still GLC or not. We still are run by committees. We're still subject to central banks. So in that sense, the shift hadn't been as great as people probably think, yeah. So it's been a rather smooth transition. The shareholders take a stake on the board, but they don't run. So it's professionally managed throughout both sites that I've been in.
I see. So were there any shortcomings or anything you know that you would like to share? You know, moving from even if you're saying that's the same, but.
Well, institutions differ from one place to another largely due to leadership. So not so much from, in my view, at least from my experience, had been shareholding driven, leadership driven.
Well, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll be talking about innovation levels at banking GLCs and the issue of gender equality on GLC boards. Stay with us. Welcome back to Tribute to GLCs. Now, Hong Leong Islamic Bank is a wholly owned subsidiary of Hong Leong Bank. Originating as the Islamic banking division of Hong Leong Bank, it was incorporated on March 28, 2005 and has since operated and flourished as a full-fledged Islamic bank, offering innovative Sharia-compliant wholesale and investment banking solutions. Let's take a quick look at what more the bank has to offer.
Hong Leong Islamic Bank has always sought to be ahead of its game in a bid to outperform the rest, be it locally, regionally, or even internationally. Last year, Hong Leong Islamic Bank won a prestigious award in Washington, D.C. for the best sukuk deal. This cross-border transaction encourages foreigners to come and tap into the Malaysian capital market with the implementation of an ijarah structure, a leasing structure of an asset in Saudi Arabia. Being one of the few Chinese Malaysian-owned Islamic finance banks, where 50% of its customers are non-Muslims, Hong Leong Islamic Bank, or HLISB, has clearly proven that its services fulfills the needs of the people across the religious divide. Currently, 4 of the 5 banking GLCs have Islamic banking operations, namely Maybank, CIMB, AFIN and BIMB. These offerings are supported by continuous and conscious efforts towards achieving excellence in service delivery, standing testament to the solid core competencies and fundamentals in its current form.
You are watching Tribute to GLCs with Teh Maimunah, Managing Director and CEO of Hong Leong Islamic Bank. Now, Teh, Hong Leong Bank aims for a 32% growth in its digital banking platform, the Hong Leong Connect, by end 2016. Now, as CEO of Hong Leong Islamic Bank, you have won numerous awards, for banking innovations, namely the Best Sukuk Deal Award in 2014. Now, what is your view on the innovation levels in the banking GLCs, especially in the areas of Islamic and digital banking?
I have to say, in terms of Islamic banking, the GLC banks have been in the forefront of that development, and they've certainly carried the agenda of Islamic banking by the country. I don't know whether you're aware, but the country aspires to be an international Islamic financial center. So there has been a number of innovations in terms of, in particular on the capital market side. You see, particularly from the GLCs as well, coming up with new sukuk structures, introducing new markets, new currencies for sukuk, like, it was a GLC that actually did the first renminbi sukuk, the first Sing dollar sukuk, and, the government of Malaysia actually did the first sovereign US dollar sukuk. So there was a lot of innovation in that field, and like I said, largely driven by the GLC banks. In terms of digital innovation, I think we have a long way to go as a country, as an industry, when compared to some other markets. Maybe we don't feel that digital disruption is so imminent, but I'm encouraged to see some development, and one particular GLC bank who is my biggest competitor in this space in terms of digital innovation and to embrace fintech or financial technology. But we are on the right track, I believe, especially if regionalization is the aspiration and the ambition. You should move towards this to actually start moving into these markets.
Let's talk about gender equality now. Well, currently around 30% of the GLC boards are occupied by women. Now, what is your view on gender equality among Malaysian GLC boards?
I think in Malaysia, the opportunity for women is there. I think we have pretty much, we don't have, well, I never saw the glass ceiling. Either I'm willfully blind or naive, but I didn't see it. So throughout my years in a GLC organization, I didn't see that. However, I think there has to be a lot more done to encourage women to be able to continue to rise up into senior management roles. And for me personally, it's the early days when I was a young executive with young children. It was very difficult. So if you look at Scandinavian countries, they have flexi hours, they have crashes in nurseries in every office or very close to where you work. So that is the only drawback that I see, and I hope, you know, over time we will evolve into that society.
I see. But, you know, now we do have, you know, a large amount of nurseries, you know, in a large number of offices. You know, is that helping?
Firstly, it's not enough. It's not part of a rule. For instance, if you go to Sweden, there's actually a ruling within X kilometer radius, there has to be a crash.
I see.
And either the government provides it or the biggest company with X number of employees have to provide it and everybody else can use it. We don't have that, so that's not enough. But I think it's helpful. Personally, you know, you have young children, you know what it's like, right? When they get ill. And running in and out of offices would take a couple of hours of your time. So if they're just there, then you can tend to them. Because what we end up seeing is women stepping out to care for the children, and they may be, you know, stepping out for X number of years, and finding it difficult to come back in because they will have lost out in terms of seniority and all that. So whilst we have at entry level, you know, large number of women, but after a while they will fall, they kind of fall off, and largely because they're just not able to, because a lot of people forget, having children is also nation building.
Correct, correct. Well, what you mean to say, if I can just sum it up beautifully by the greatest, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, you know? Even if you're being a woman, it will never stop you from shooting for the moon. You know, even if you miss, you'll be among the stars.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Rajate. It's been such an eye-opening session. It's been a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. That was Rajate Maimunah, the CEO and Managing Director of Hong Leong Islamic Bank. Now, that wraps up this edition of Tribute to GLCs. For more information on the show, you can log on to astroawani.com. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Till then, I'm Rosmani Samdali. Thanks for watching.